So I'm putting together a new arrow build for my upcoming New Mexico elk hunt this season. And what I wanted to do is I wanted a high FOC and as light as I could get it to maintain the speed. And this is what I've come up with. I've got a 28-inch cut carbon to carbon Black Eagle X Impact in a 300 spine. Then I went to Ethics Archery and got their adjustable outsert system for the .165 with a .234 collar, and full length. This is 110 grains, and the collar is 25 grains. So with the collar, I'm at 126 grains, 125 grains, and then I'm going to go with a 125 grain iron will, non-vented. I'm in the process of putting this together. I've already cut my shafts. I've taken a silver Sharpie and coated the end of this so that I can true up the ends. I've already done the same on the knock ends after I cut them. Then I'm going to put it in my squaring tool and twist this thing around until all of the silver is gone off the end of the shaft. That way I know I'm square. I take this little Easton stone that comes with the hit insert arrows. I had it laying around, and I just take it and twist the end just to sort of knock off the inside edge a little bit and knock out any burrs that might be in the inside and knock the carbon dust out. Got one more that I'm going to do here on this and get the silver off the ends. Now I've taken these arrows and I've gone through the entire dozen, and these are all 300 spine, and they have a straightness tolerance of 0.001, and all of the arrows I was able to cut from one end that allowed me to keep the branding logo all the same. But I had two, one that I've cut and one that I haven't, that even though I cut it from the end that was wobbling, it's not as true as I'd like it to be. So I think what I'm going to wind up doing is flip-flopping it and putting it on the other end and use these two as my practice arrows. I've weighed all of these, and with the knock I'm at 234 grains. Now what I've done is I've gone and not used the standard Black Eagle knock, and I've gone to a Easton Deep 6 knock. It's a shorter knock, and so it tends to have a little bit less flex than the factory knocks. They just seem to hold up a little better. They're a little bit tighter fit also. So I'll wind up using these two for field points, practice arrows. There's not enough wobble in there to even worry about really, but I'll have 10 shafts that are ready to hunt with, and 2 that I can just target shoot with. Now I'll take and practice with all those, and I'll shoot each one of these with a broadhead out to probably 70-80 yards, just to make sure that they're hitting and tracking the way they want. I try not to group shoot broadheads, because I always wind up cutting off fletchings, hitting arrows, damaging arrows, and these are just too expensive shafts to mess with and have to worry about hitting them. So then my next process that I'm going through is, I don't know if you can see it or not, but I've taken and I've marked the end of the shaft with a silver Sharpie and the insert with a black Sharpie where it spins the truest and has no wobble. The collar's not a big deal because it just slides over and it doesn't really have any bearing on whether it wobbles or not. It just slides over and seats. You don't have to glue those on. I guess you could. But when you screw your broadhead in or your field point, it pretty much seats everything in there tight, and that just protects the overlap of the shaft where the connection is. Now what this has done, which was new to me, because I had been using the focus inserts from Black Eagle, and those consisted of a small aluminum insert, and then it has a little cap screw, and then the stainless outsert goes over top, and then this cap screw goes inside and tightens down, which was nice because you're able to adjust your alignment on your broadheads and get them all the same. They worked really good. Occasionally I was getting just shooting them into targets, I was getting a slight bend, micro bend in the aluminum insert itself, and I would get a wobble and just couldn't get it out and couldn't figure out what it was, and I would replace it and put a new insert in and the wobble would go away. So I went to Ethics and got the full length one, which gave me about 35 more grains up front than what I had before, which increased my FOC, and I really only gained, I was shooting 502 with a complete arrow before. Now I'll be shooting 517 with a completed arrow, but I'm going from a 19% FOC to a 22% FOC. I don't really think it makes that much difference, but I was going to cut these down and play with the different weights, but once you cut them, you can't uncut them. So I started playing with them full weight, full length, and they seemed to work fine. And I was able to tune my bow to them. It did come out a little bit going from that short insert, which on the same length shaft, going from this short insert to this full length insert, which basically goes in the shaft a full, almost double what this insert length is. it actually stiffened the spine of my arrows. Where before, with everything trued up, shooting the same broadheads, I was getting bullet holes. Not a problem. Shooting them out to distance, not a problem. Perfect arrow flight. I put these in, and I was getting a slight overspine shaft with the same length shaft, same broadhead, same knock, same everything. So what I had to do is, rather than adjust my rest, I had some soft knocks on my string, and I had like four knots on the top. I took out 2 knots, so I basically just raised my knock point maybe a 1/16, and that cleared it up, and it's all dialed in now and shooting good. So I'm happy with that. I probably could have cut this off another 10 grains off or 20 grains off. Might have helped, might have not. Still might have had to adjust the bow, don't know. So I'm going to go with it this way. But right now I'm in the process of going shaft by shaft with my inserts, putting them on my spinning tool, and putting a broadhead in. Everything is squared up, spinning correctly, pulling it out, marking it, and move on to my next step. Okay, on my next step, I've got one of my shafts in the arrow spinner here. I've got my broadhead on there, and I'm going to spin it. Now I've got it over a piece of white paper because it's easier for me to see if I've got any wobble in it or not. And this one looks pretty good. So this is the one that I'd done previous, and you can see I've got the markings on the shaft there. So I'll set this one aside, move on to the next one, and see what we've got. So I'll take this. I've already got the ends squared, both knock and point side. I'll take my insert, the full insert length. I'm just going to insert that, make sure it's seated, put my sleeve over top, screw my broadhead in, put it on there, and I see that one's got a little bit of a wobble. So I'll turn it a little bit. It still has a little bit. Getting better. Still a tiny bit. Rotate it a little more. Still a little bit. That seems to be pretty good right there. Then I'll spin it just to double check. That looks pretty good. And you can also take and put that white paper up against the point. See if you're getting any wobble in the tip. That one seems to be pretty good. So then what I'll do is unscrew the broadhead, pull the cap straight off so you don't turn it. I'll take my silver Sharpie, make a small mark on the shaft, take my black Sharpie, make a corresponding mark on the arrow itself, on the insert, so that I have everything lined up. So when I go to glue it in, all I have to do is line it up. Now what I do when I glue them in, which is the next process, and what I'll do in that case is, I know they recommend using epoxy and blah 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 blah, but I'm always adjusting and tinkering and turning stuff around and trying different points and weights and stuff like that. So I get the boning blue. It's got to be the blue, which is the low heat hot melt for the carbon shafts, and you don't need a lot of heat. And I heat up, hold the point, heat it up just lightly, put the blue on, smear it around. You really only need to go about the first 3/4 of an inch on this. You don't need to go all the way down the length. And then I'll insert it into the shaft, line my lines up, and then I have a cup of water, and I'll stick it in the water, cool it off, and then wipe it down, and everything's good. I haven't had any problems, but I'm real careful when I do it. This is gonna be a multiple part video, because I'm gonna go in through the tuning process. I'm gonna shoot them bare shaft. I'm gonna paper tune each shaft and make sure that they're shooting like they're supposed to. I'm going to knock tune them, bare shaft shoot them, and then I'm going to fletch them, and then we should be ready to go. So tune in for the next section. Okay, the next step, after I've taken and I've spun every shaft with the broadhead with the insert in, and I've marked the shaft and the insert and the collar, so that when it's put together, all of my marks line up. So then I'm going to take my insert, pull it out. You don't need a lot of heat, so I'm going to turn my torch way down there. I'm going to heat up my insert. Take my blue carbon shaft hot melt. Just put it on the top inch maybe. Then I'm going to get my little mark, which now I can't see. There it is. Then I'm going to heat it up again. Then I'm going to get my shaft, and I'm going to line my shaft up with my little marks, slide it in, twist it a little bit, get it lined up, and then I'm going to put it in the water, cool it down. Then after you're done, you can just take your fingernail and clean this off here, and you're all ready to go. Then you can take your outsert collar, slide it over top, line up your marks there, and take whatever broadhead you happen to be using, or field point or whatever, and screw that in, and that'll lock it up. Then I'll go back through and I'll put these on the tester again and spin them again, make sure that they're still spinning true. And if I need to adjust a little bit, you can take and just take the outsert off, heat the thing a little bit, take your pliers and twist it a little bit, and you should be pretty close. But marking them ahead of time saves a lot of hassle, because at least you've already gone through the spinning before everything was glued, and before it's attached and it's dry fit, and it should work good and should spin for you. And yeah, that one spins good. Doesn't spin so good with that particular field point, because that field point is kind of crooked. But this broadhead's straight and it spins perfect. So we're good to go. So we'll move on and do the rest of these, and then we'll go to the next section. Okay, I got all the inserts glued in, sleeves lined up with my marked points. Now I'm going to go back through and test them. They all seem to be spinning correctly. This one's not. So I'm going to have to modify that one. Let me check these other couple here. This one's got a little wiggle in it too. So I'll take and try turn this collar a little bit. No. Okay, another one I got to work on. Alright, so I've got two that I need to play with. So let's see here. Alright, so I got that one done just by rotating the collar. So what I'll do is take a little bit of acetone here, and I'll take the black mark off of there, and I'll take the silver Sharpie mark off of the shaft. Actually, you really only need to take the black mark off the collar. And then I'll take my Sharpie, my silver Sharpie, and I'll mark my shaft again. And I'll take my black Sharpie and I'll mark my collar so that I have corresponding marks. Don't know if that's focusing or not, but you get the gist. So I've got those done now. That one's done. This one here, which was giving me a little issue, we'll try turning that collar a little more. Oh, that made it worse. Turn it a little more, tighten it back up. Still worse. Got it. So I'll take my acetone, take my mark off my collar there, still have my silver mark on the shaft, and I will mark my corresponding dot on the collar. So now I've got these done, all trued up. So now I can put field points on them and go to my next section, which will be bare shaft tuning and knock tuning. Okay, now the next step is going to be knock tuning. We've already taken the arrows and I shot them into a foam target that is secure and doesn't wobble. Made sure that the shafts were somewhat hitting the target plumb and were straight from about 21 feet. So now, just to double check, I'm going to shoot every shaft through paper and try to get a perfect bullet hole. If I get a consistent rip and I get them all the same, then I can adjust my rest accordingly to get that bullet hole. I've done 10 of my 12 arrows, or I've done almost all of them. I've got some more I need to do. They've all come out pretty good. I've been able to just rotate the knock like a quarter turn, sometimes a little less, to get my perfect bullet hole. I mark the shaft, mark the knock, and then I'll turn it to see where I'm at after each shot. If it comes out bullet first time, I'm good. If not, then I've got to take and turn it quarter turn. If it gets better, quarter turn more. If it gets worse, back it up like half of that and just work it in until I get it good. I'm going to show you my paper that I've been shooting. sort of point out what I've got going here. Hold on. So as you can see, I've taken each arrow and I numbered all my shafts. It's like these, like 3 here for instance, they were from my number 7 shaft. It was pretty close. I adjusted it a little bit, just a little, not even a quarter turn, and got a bullet hole. Went to my next shaft. You know, I started with 3. That one was good right out of the bat, right out of the gate, so I left it alone. 4, I had a little bit of a weird tear, a little bit of a weird tear, a little bit of a weird tear, worked across till finally I got it tuned and I got perfect hole. Marked that one, was good. 5 was pretty good right out of the box. 1 and 2 down here, you can see I had a little bit of issues with them, but I finally got them dialed in and then just worked my way through the dozen. I got 10. 10 was good. 11 was good. 12 I'm still working on, and then I've got some other shafts I'm going to do. And I'll sit here and I'll shoot one and I'll show you what I'm looking for and show you how to walk through possibly correcting it if you run into the same problem. So now that I've got my mark, I've made a mark on the knock itself. There's where I started, and I worked my way around to there. So now I'll take my Sharpie and I'll mark the shaft into where the knock should be. And I'll go to the next one. I shoot this with my quiver on, quiver full, just so it calculates any torquing or leaning that I might do while I'm doing this. That way I know that everything's lined up like it's supposed to be, and all the shafts are going to shoot straight. Your broadheads will fly remarkably better. I've got another step that I've taken with the ones that I've already shot in that I will recap for you and show you what I've done there. So I've marked this, marked the shaft, marked the knock. I always use the little indicator that's on the side of your knocks. It'll have a little ridge or a little dimple on it or something. I always shoot that to the outside. That way I know that I'm doing everything the exact same way every time. So let's turn this around and see what we get. Okay, got a dead low tear. So I'll take and turn this quarter turn. Let's see what happens. Still low, not quite as bad as it was, but we'll make another adjustment and we'll go another quarter turn. Let's see what that does. And there we go. I'm sorry, it went from this to that, and then another quarter turn, and it went to that. And that's what we want. Bullet hole. So that's what we need to do on each and every shaft. And I will take you back inside here and I will show you what I've done on my next step to orient my broadhead blades. Okay, we got the bare shafts shot. We paper tuned the bare shafts. We knock tuned the bare shafts. So now they're all shooting perfect bullet holes at about 21 feet. And then I've taken and thrown one back to 10 yards and then 20 yards, and they're still shooting bullet holes. So now we've come back inside, and I had to take the arrows and I put my broadhead of choice on there. I shoot two different styles. I either shoot a Magnus Black Hornet or I shoot a Iron Will. Both are 125s. When I shoot this type of broadhead, I always like to shoot coming off the bow with the big blade vertical. So I had to take the arrows, because now I've knock tuned them and marked the shaft where they shoot straight, knock up. Now I had to coordinate that blade with that, so I had to take a couple of them. Were close, a couple were way off, some were a little bit, and pull apart everything, mark it, heat the tip lightly, because I'm using the blue carbon hot melt. You don't have to get it very hot. And I was able to take and just twist the insert a little bit, dip it in some water, cool it off, put it back together, put it on my arrow spinner, spin it, get my broadhead lined up with my knock. And if you're using a Blitzenberger fletching tool, you're going to have to coordinate that and mark it so that when you put the first click, your blade's marked. So mark your shaft, put it in there, take it out, look at it, and then make a mark on your receiver of your Fletcher here, so that you can get things lined up. I have the upgraded knock set thing on here. I think Zenith makes it, and it's a little bit more precise than the standard one that comes with it. So it's made it a little bit more complicated, because now I've had to mark that, which is the same process, but then I had to put the wrap on, which you know how to do that. Put it on a mouse pad, lay it out, line it up, roll it, you got that. And then I had to mark the wrap with a pencil mark so I can get it off. And then I've got to pull the knock back out, because that's how it fits on here without the knock. So I'm going to fletch up these three, then I'll move on to the next three, and then the next three, then the next three. I took my vanes. I'm using the Blazer heat vanes, and I took and weighed out every vane that I was going to use and sorted them, made sure that they were all 6 grains apiece like they're supposed to be, so that you don't have different weight grains and you've got one arrow that weighs this much, the next arrow is this much. You know, I'm just trying to keep everything all the same across the board. So I'll get these fletched up, and then I'll come back and update you. Okay, we got one complete, 518 grains. The Gold Tip FOC calculator says it should be 517.5. You got some glue for your point and some glue on your feathers. Half a grain. Anyway, there it is. Complete. Ready for elk season. Got my feathers all lined up with my broadhead. Nock tuned, paper tuned, broadhead tuned. All I gotta do now is I gotta shoot these. They should shoot fine. I've never had a problem in the past with getting anything but broadhead and field point both hitting the same point of impact, close enough so that field points wind up hitting the back of my broadhead. Got one right here. It's got some chips out of the back side of the blade there from bare shafts and field point arrows hitting the back side of it when their shafts touching. If you're shooting them both together, always shoot your broadhead arrow first. Otherwise you'll cut off feathers off of your field point arrow. So, hope you enjoyed this. Hope it was helpful. This is a complete build out of a Black Eagle X Impact Blazer heat vanes, Ethics Archery inserts and outsert, and Iron Will Outfitters broadheads. Thanks for watching.